In the latest U.S. tariff revision, Brazil stands out as a special case. Although it had previously been warned it could face tariffs of up to 50% due to disagreements over foreign policy and its independent stance in multilateral forums, the actual rate imposed was only 10%. This is a low level on par with traditional U.S. allies like the United Kingdom and Japan. Notably, Brazil is not among the countries with stable strategic ties to the United States. In recent years, it has actively sought a greater role within the expanded BRICS group, clearly expressing positions not entirely aligned with Western-led financial and political institutions. However, Brazil has not leaned fully toward China either. Instead, it maintains a balancing role, engaging in cooperation with emerging economies while keeping trade relations open with developed partners. Another factor worth considering is Brazil's role in energy policy in Latin America. The country possesses substantial potential in renewable energy, including biomass wind and large-scale hydroelectric power. As the U.S. seeks to compete with China's influence in South America through clean energy and technology channels, maintaining a positive relationship with Brazil is seen as a pragmatic choice. From a political science perspective, the low tariff rate on Brazil may be interpreted as a form of soft adjustment, a limited incentive meant to keep Brazil within the dialogue framework without making it feel as if it holds a favored position. This is a common tactic in influence competition strategies where the policy setter aims to prevent a country from shifting toward a rival while preserving room for future bargaining. Amid shifting economic alliances, the U.S. approach to Brazil demonstrates a trend of using tariff tools as part of a strategy to maintain relations at a manageable and controllable level. In stark contrast to Brazil, a country not fully aligned with the U.S., yet only facing a 10% tariff, India, despite being expected to replace China in the global supply chain, bears the highest tariff among strategic partners, 25%. This figure has surprised many analysts. In recent years, numerous tech giants from Apple and Google to chip manufacturers have been shifting production to India. Washington has also openly supported building a new supply chain in Asia with India at the center. Yet the newly announced tariff schedule places New Delhi among the most tightly controlled strategic partners. According to experts from AP and The Guardian, the U.S. government remains cautious about New Delhi's strategic direction. The reason lies in India's rising push for technological self-reliance. The country is not only developing domestic chips, AI, and defense tech, but is also building an independent ecosystem, for instance, launching Bharat OS, a government-backed mobile operating system aimed at replacing Android. The rollout of Bharat OS isn't merely a tech advancement. It's a clear political message India seeks to break away from dependency on American big tech. In addition, many U.S. firms like NVIDIA and Apple face ownership restrictions in key sectors such as semiconductors, showing that New Delhi does not wish to grant excessive control to foreign investors. From a strategic perspective, Washington appears concerned about the emergence of a second China, a populous, powerful nation capable of creating its own production chain and tech ecosystem while maintaining an independent stance. If India grows too fast outside the sphere of oversight, it could become a competitor rather than a partner, something the U.S. is eager to avoid. As a result, the 25% tariff acts as a form of growth control. It doesn't block the path, but forces progress at a pace the U.S. can monitor and influence. High tariffs also pressure international firms. Instead of concentrating their production chains entirely in India, they must diversify across other markets, minimizing the risk of forming an overly dominant manufacturing hub. Through this approach, the U.S. maintains influence over India without direct confrontation. The tariff doesn't halt cooperation but compels New Delhi to proceed more cautiously in developing its critical tech sectors. In contrast to India, another Asian country also facing high tariffs is Vietnam, but in a very different context. While India is being regulated due to its rapid growth potential, Vietnam's case relates to its position in the value chain and measures to prevent trade fraud. Compared to India, Vietnam faces a lower tariff, 20%. However, within the regional context, this rate is still higher than in countries like Cambodia, Malaysia, or Indonesia, which are taxed at 18% or less. This has led to many comparisons regarding the fairness and priority direction of current U.S. tariff policies in Southeast Asia. Nonetheless, the 20% figure must be viewed within a broader context. Vietnam is currently the largest ASEAN exporter to the United States, especially in sectors like electronics, semiconductor components, and consumer tech devices. According to a report cited by Reuters, in just the first half of 2025, U.S. imports of tech goods from Vietnam rose nearly 30% year over year. This indicates Vietnam is playing an increasingly critical role in the global tech supply chain. However, due to such rapid growth, the U.S. also needs to implement control measures to prevent origin fraud, particularly the risk of Chinese goods using Vietnam as a transshipment point to evade tariffs. The 20% tariff can be interpreted as a balancing act between two goals. 1. Maintaining Vietnam as a reliable manufacturing hub in the supply chain, and 2. Introducing a moderate barrier to curb illegal trade practices. This rate isn't high enough to significantly deter foreign direct investment (FDI), but it does compel companies to be more transparent in supply chain management. Additionally, Vietnam's geographic proximity to China, existing infrastructure, and competitive labor costs offer advantages that other ASEAN countries have yet to match. While other countries faced immediate tariff adjustments, Mexico was granted a 90-day delay before new U.S. tariffs take effect. This decision wasn't purely economic, it directly relates to the security framework at the shared border between the two nations. Mexico shares the longest border with the U.S., over 3,000 kilometers. Any major economic disruption, from recession to unemployment, risks increasing the flow of migrants crossing illegally into U.S. territory. And in fact, despite Washington deploying advanced surveillance technologies like facial recognition and behavior analyzing, AI illegal border crossings in May 2025 rose by 38% compared to the same period last year. In response to this pressure, the U.S. was forced to rethink its approach. Keeping Mexico stable became the top priority. During the tariff delay, both sides negotiated a biometric data sharing agreement aimed at quickly verifying identities, tracking migrants, and building institutional links between the two administrative systems. This shift highlights a redefinition of Mexico's role. Instead of being just a manufacturing node, the country is now being integrated into a broader migration control strategy spanning technology, data, and policy. In this context, tariffs are not being used as punishment tools, but rather as regulatory levers tied directly to the level of Mexico's cooperation in managing border flows. The U.S. understands that any economic shock to Mexico right now, like a sudden tariff hike, could trigger uncontrollable fallout at the border. At the same time, Mexico still serves as a key intermediary in the U.S. production chain, especially in sectors like automotive, industrial equipment, and precision engineering. An ill-timed tariff hit could disrupt the domestic supply chain, something Washington is unwilling to risk, especially while inflation remains a sensitive issue. Therefore, the 90-day tariff delay is not a trade concession, but a technical measure aimed at maintaining a minimum level of stability for Mexico while the U.S. continues to assess systemic risks. However, U.S. considerations regarding Mexico are mostly short-term and focused on regional stability. For contrast, take a look at how the U.S. handles tariff policy with China, the only strategic rival capable of directly competing across nearly all modern tech sectors. In this round of tariff adjustments, China holds particularly strategic importance. Although it's not exempt, the U.S. has decided to postpone additional tariffs on certain high-tech goods from China for another 90 days. This isn't a sign of concession, it reflects the reality that the U.S. has yet to find a complete replacement for China's role in the global production chain. Unlike in the past, when China mainly served as a manufacturing hub, it has now risen to become a provider of core technologies ranging from semiconductors and 5G to new energy and integrated AI and software platforms. In 2025, China continues to strengthen its position on the global tech map, not through hardware products but via comprehensive AI-driven solutions. Most notable is the launch of its educational AI platform, Hawk 2.0, an AI-powered learning tool already implemented in many schools across Africa and Latin America, two regions long considered the West's backyard. At the same time, a wave of Chinese AI startups focused on agriculture is drawing large investments from financially strong and regionally influential countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil. The solutions they offer go beyond individual sensors or automation devices. They represent full-scale ecosystems from soil data collection, weather analysis, crop forecasting, to algorithm-based farming operations. China has shifted from supporting global supply chains to directly competing in both technology and market share. Therefore, tariff adjustments cannot be made purely on economic grounds. They must be calculated within a broader influence control strategy. The U.S. cannot impose large-scale tariffs immediately without risking disruption to its own production chain, especially in industries still dependent on Chinese components or raw materials. Additionally, China still supplies the bulk of input materials for many intermediate tech products. Without a specific replacement roadmap, sudden tariff hikes could negatively impact even American companies. The postponed tariffs may be viewed as a technical adjustment period as well as an opportunity for the U.S. to strengthen alternative manufacturing alliances in regions like Southeast Asia, India, or the EU. China no longer relies on U.S. orders as before. It is building new markets, proactively exporting technology, and developing independent production. The structure of economic power is shifting. The U.S. must prepare thoroughly before enacting new tariffs, otherwise it risks unintended consequences to its own system. This latest round of U.S. tariff adjustments isn't aimed at increasing tax revenue. The main goal is to reassess each country's role in the global supply chain. The U.S. is using tariffs as a strategic tool to limit growth speed, prevent partners from moving beyond its sphere of influence, and retain leverage in regions where its position may be weakening. Rather than optimizing for short-term economic gains, the U.S. is prioritizing the redefinition of strategic boundaries, reevaluating each country's role, and adjusting the pace of growth among its economic partners. This approach aligns with today's multi-layered competitive landscape, where technology, energy, and supply chains are becoming the new pillars of foreign policy. Over the next 6 to 12 months, the U.S. may continue to revise its tariff policy based on circumstances. Several possible directions have been suggested. Implementing a flexible tariff mechanism based on political context instead of fixed fiscal cycles. Accelerating the formation of new supply chain alliances between the U.S., Japan, the EU, Vietnam, and India. Imposing higher tariffs on goods with sensitive technological components, especially AI semiconductors and equipment tied to military infrastructure. The structure of the global economy is shifting. The U.S. is unwilling to allow any country to dominate too large a position if it threatens the system under its control. Tariffs are no longer just a trade policy. In this current phase, they serve as tools of political deterrence. What do you think about how the U.S. is reshaping global influence through its tariff policies? Share your thoughts. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a comment so we can continue tracking global strategic developments together.